When I was a young financial analyst, I loved analysis. One thing that I really hated the most is I used to spend 80% of my time in cleaning the data. I said, when will I really add value? When is that business partnering going to happen actually, right?
The world of finance or the finance function is moving from being post-mortem reporting to being prescriptive, predictive, insightful, right? The number one challenge that we see typically from customers, the lack of visibility into the business.
I think it's equally important for us to understand what not to do in an ERP implementation. So
True.
Or what would be your advice to kind of CFOs to future-proof their finance function? So today we have a very special guest, someone who has done more than 400 ERP implementations and consultations. Right? Welcome, Anilesh Kumar, Managing Director, InTWO. Welcome, Anilesh.
Thank you, Dhawal. Great to be here. Great to be on your podcast.
Pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
So, Anilesh, your career has been an amazing blend of technology, marketing communications, and now advising as a consultant to finance leaders. So how has that career journey been for you? And can you throw some light on some of the key learnings from it?
Thank you, Dhawal. So first of all, let me tell you a little bit about myself personally. I'm 42 years old. I've been 24 years in Dubai. I'm a father of two kids. I have a lovely wife. I've got two dogs, so a wholesome family life. From a business standpoint, I've been entrepreneurial for a lot of my career. So I started my first venture when I was 25. It was a Marcom firm. In 2009, we started a dynamics consulting firm. It ran for about 10 years. It grew to about 250 people. And then we got acquired by Schneider Electric in 2019. Under Schneider, we merged with about 3 other companies to form a company called InTWO, a larger Microsoft consulting firm. We do Azure, we do Dynamics, we do data and AI, and we look to transform businesses using Microsoft technology. And now in 2024, we exited Schneider with a management buyout, supported by private equity, and now we're trying to grow the business with the help of our shareholders and our growing team.
Amazing. That's been an exciting journey, I would say. Anilesh, InTWO has helped more than 400 clients across 40 plus countries with their technology transformation. So what are some of the common challenges that CFOs come to you with, and what are the kind of problems that InTWO can help them with?
Yeah, I think the number one challenge that we see typically from customers is, who are looking to implement an ERP, especially the CFO is the stakeholder of the ERP project in many cases, is the lack of visibility into the business. So decision making is hampered because they don't get access to, let's say, accurate and real-time data. And that is critical in today's agile world, right? I think things move very fast. There's a lot of pivots that businesses need to make, and hence decision making is critical in the right direction and on the back of right data. So that tends to be the number one challenge. And I would say that is today difficult because many companies have silos of applications, silos of data. There's a lot of Excel that band-aids the systems itself and the reporting and the data. So in that world, the CFOs spend a lot of time trying to reconcile data, get data together, get the reporting in place to service, let's say, the business functions and the management layer, right? And that in turn takes away time from strategic capacity. So because of that, finance and the CFO ends up becoming a reporting function. They become more of a controller and less of a business partner, in my opinion, right? So we tend to see that quite often. Yeah, and again, that's one paradigm or one corridor that you can think about. The other one is regulations, right? Complexity of regulations. All businesses after a certain point want to expand, go into multiple industries or multiple countries. Every country, every industry brings its own regulatory complexity. Compliance with that has to be strong, otherwise you again open up risk. So that again is another critical challenge that I see with the CFO function and the finance function today. And if you look at a different perspective or a segment of, let's say, industry, the SMB layer, I think they have two challenges. One is the finance function itself is light because SMBs by nature can invest in talent and resource up to a certain point.
Right.
And on the other side, they are low on working capital typically, especially in this region, which means that they have to spend a lot of time in managing working capital. So that again takes all the attention and time towards working capital and management of
Right.
working capital. And that tends to be a challenge in the SMB sector.
Understood.
Now, I think the second part of your question is how does technology help, if I
Yes,
understood that
yes.
correctly, right? So I think what we see again is getting rid of the silos, right? So how do you move away from semi-automated, silo, band-aided spaghetti architecture in the digital landscape of a company? So getting a really good digital backbone with the ERP as, let's say, the center of that experience is
Right.
going to be very important. Having that on the cloud is today not only natural, it's a necessity. So that's again very important. I would say, around the cloud ERP, having RPA, AI to automate manual processes, things that are mundane, taking away repetitive tasks from, let's say, the business finance is very
Right.
important. And I would say getting AI into the journey, I think, right? That's super critical because
Yes.
then you unlock a lot of value. You transform your business, you transform the use of the finance function, and I think that's where you see value.
Right, right. I think you touched upon availability of data and teams spending more time on compliance-related activities or things which are non-value add. But I think technology can definitely solve that, and we are seeing a lot of shift in people adopting to technologies like RPA, AI, ML, so that they are able to unlock those efficiencies and truly add value into the business. Now, my next question to you is that, okay, so if I'm a CFO thinking about ERP and thinking about building a futuristic finance function, what are some of the prerequisites that I need to be aware of before even thinking of going into an ERP implementation or any other tech stack, implementing a tech stack for that matter?
Yeah, yeah. I think number one, I think every implementation, every adoption of technologies is standard, but also fairly unique. So everyone is in a different position, in my opinion, right? So there's no single solution
One size fits
to
all solution.
to solve a problem, right? Now, what are the broad parameters that I think are the broad prerequisites / readiness parameters that you can have when you go into a large implementation of any technology? Let's say ERP as an example, right? So number one is aligning business and strategy with what you're doing, right? So making sure that you have a clear business case. It's not only about cost savings, it's a lot about, hey, why are we implementing an ERP? Where does it unlock value? How does it make us more agile as an organization? So understanding the business case and communicating that business case quite strongly, upwards and downwards, right? So making sure that that's the first layer of change management, in my opinion, making sure that everybody is on the bus
Objective is
and
clear.
the bus can move forward, right? So that's kind of the first step. The second is thinking about processes. So you need to think about defining your to-be processes up ahead rather than getting into an implementation and then trying to figure out or unravel your business processes, because that can put a lot of pressure on the project, on the stakeholders in the project, and on the budget and the scope of the project, right? So this is another area that I think there's a lot of room to win, that how much can you discuss pre-project before you get to the actual kickoff of the project, right? So that becomes an important step. Data readiness, again, another important step. So make sure that who are the owners of the data, what's the current state, how do you clean that up? So it's almost a parallel project to a lot of ERP projects and also other ancillary implementations. Change management, governance, I think these are interrelated. So
Yeah.
thinking about how do you manage change in your organization? What is the level of change required? How do you manage communications as a sub process in change? These are important thoughts. Sometimes people overlook it. They think that it is these are the softer intangible elements, so they tend to think that it's not so critical at times, and
Right.
it's very important in my opinion, right? And the other is the governance layer. So you get into an ERP project, for example, how are you going to govern it without causing overkill also? So it's governance is good up to a certain point, and then you have to see, are you burdening the project with governance as well? So finding that right balance and making sure that all the participants are involved in the governance of the project and communication is smooth flowing. And I would say it's kind of, I'm saying it later in the number of things I'm saying, but technology and vendor selection and partner selection, right? Eventually you have to find a technology that works for your business, is fit for purpose for the long term. It's not a short term decision. And you have a partner who has got great value fit and cultural fit and resource fit for your business, because that's ultimately, it's eventually a people project. So you need to
Right.
find a business that works with you, not only in the first 6 months or 12 months of the project, but it's a 10-year journey, right? It's a 5 to 10 year investment. So
Right.
do you have a partner who can stay along with you through a long journey, in my opinion, right? And then you have to set a sense of realism between everybody involved in the project, right? What are the timelines? What are the phases? What is the scope? How can the scope grow? What is the budget today? What can be the changes in the budget? So all of this becomes very important. So very realistic, deep thinking is what I would think is very critical to make an ERP project succeed. And my experience is a lot of times, companies tend to think about it to some degree as a commodity and go into the commodity purchase mindset, and that can
Right.
be detrimental to the outcome of the project.
No, I think very rightly said. I'm kind of liking how we are kind of developing or coming to a framework here that which are the different components of being ready before going into an ERP. There was a data layer, there was readiness in terms of process, change management, and of course the right vendor partner. So that's the kind of framework that we are coming up with here. And like you rightly said, it is probably the preparation might probably take anywhere between 6 months to 12 months, even before we are ready to call that first vendor and start taking a quote and then start implementing that next process, right? So I think a lot of thought needs to be given in terms of strategy, in terms of processes, in terms of who's going to own what in the system after the implementation is done. So all of these are extremely critical. So can you share some stories around successful ERP implementations and what went right for them? What were those ingredients that really went right for them?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and one of the things that I was thinking about as you said that was that maybe I should share more about the failures than the success, right?
Yeah, okay. I think it's equally important for us to understand what not to do in an ERP
True.
implementation. So
True,
yeah,
because
interesting.
we've learned so much more from the failures than from the success, right? I think
So
that's
true.
failure is a great teacher, in my opinion.
So true.
And I will, without taking names, I'll mention a couple of experiences broadly, right? So one was, for example, a UAE-based oil and gas services firm, engineering firm, and very good company, very well governed, great leader, very involved in the project. So the CEO himself was involved to a great degree in the selection process and eventually in the implementation and the steerco of the project. Now, in that particular example, for example, we saw the CFO, who was the key driver of the project. He had almost a view or a pathway in which he tried to replicate his old processes in the new ERP. So he did not look to unlock a lot of value via process re-engineering, adopting standards, restricting customizations, even thinking beyond the finance function, right? Being the CFO, he was very close to the finance function, but a little bit distant from the business. So, for example, a CRM was part of the ERP implementation, and I think there was not enough attention paid to the, let's say, the early portions of the order to cash cycle, for example. So in that particular example, the project went live, and it was a successful project from the perspective that it went live. But did it deliver all the value that we wanted? Not fully, because we feel that we replicated a lot of old processes, and even we as a partner to some degree did not challenge the business sufficiently that, hey, why don't you think about this a little bit differently and change your process? And that was a learning for us, that we really have to go in and push the change agenda from a process standpoint for the right reasons, and make sure that we are adopting best practice, right? So that was a very nice example where when I sat down with that CEO and we said, hey, let's one-to-one discuss our learnings and share our success and failure. We have that heart-to-heart conversation, and we realized that, hey, maybe this is an area that we could have done a little bit more. So that was one example. Again, like I said, it's never a success or a failure, but it's a spectrum, right? So that's one, and that's where you pick up some learnings from areas that can improve. The other one that I can think of is a manufacturing firm, again in UAE. Product selection was done by one of the big four. Again, I won't name them, but one of the big four looked at SAP, Microsoft, and so forth. We eventually got into the implementation with Microsoft Dynamics, FNO, which is the larger ERP. And there, there were a couple of things that I saw from a learning perspective. One was exactly what I said earlier, that the business had not aligned processes before the project. So the project duration was expected to be, let's say, between 12 and 14 months. We took 6 months to finalize the business processes in the beginning.
Right.
So once that happens, what I've realized is that that puts a lot of pressure on timelines, puts a lot of pressure on the resources, puts a lot of pressure on the budget. So it opens up what do you call, simplistically put, a can of worms, because the one element out of the many elements we spoke about was not addressed pre-project sufficiently, in my opinion. So that was a really nice eye opener, that, hey, we go into an exercise and then we start discussing, hey, how do the systems talk to each other? How is the integration going to work? What is the real process? And then there are a lot of deep process discussions between business functions, and then the ERP project loses momentum because the process is not yet at the state of maturity you want. So I think these were two examples. And what I see is also that one thing being wrong can put a lot of pressure on everything else in an ERP project. So that is why an ERP project is tough to get right, because you have to get almost everything right to get to a good outcome. And your question was, hey, where do you see success, right? And I think, some of it is, areas that you see and you think, how can I avoid this the next time, or get better as we go forward in ERP consulting. On the other side, what I see as success typically is where companies have a lot of readiness. They know what they want. They've discussed the processes. To degree, the finance and the IT function are great at orchestrating with the rest of the business. So it's very deep business partnering with the rest of the business to make sure the ERP lands well and in line with business process across business. And adopt standard best practices which ERPs have from the get-go, right? So don't customize unless there is a real justifiable need. Don't over-engineer, don't over-govern. Make it very real in terms of how you go after an implementation and reaching the right outcomes. And also phase out, right? Understand how much the business can absorb, because ERP by nature is disruptive to business, which means that it is going to take a little bit of effort. It is a little bit of it's a little bit of a extra load on the business. So make sure that you're keeping your resources ready. You're keeping the project phased out in a logical way, such that the business can absorb the change that it brings as it goes forward.
Interesting. So you brought a point that doing the old processes in the new tool was probably not the best way to approach an ERP implementation. So connected to that, I had a question. So how and when does the process redesign start? And is it really dependent on the ERP, or how much does a ERP influence the process redesign, or can the process redesign happen completely independently, and then we can think about which ERP to implement? Is that even possible?
It's a good question, and it's a good question that I think is important to discuss also at a base level in every implementation, right? So the first thing that I would say is that understand where are your business processes not being optimal. So when you go into a business, you find a lot of people doing processes because they've done it for a long period of time, right? And no one has really re-engineered that process over a period of time. So there's a lot of room to get in best practice into your business process without even an ERP coming in, right? So that's just classical getting your processes right.
Right.
And that can happen as a precursor, so that the change element and the alignment element that is required at that stage is addressed pre ERP project or pre kickoff, let's say.
Okay.
Up to a certain degree, you will standardize your processes. And then when you go into the ERP project, of course, you will do a business process analysis workshop and you'll go through the discussions. And there you can have the second layer of re-engineering, where you can look at the tool and the best practices out of the tool and see, okay, now I've re-engineered my processes now, and then this is what the ERP is suggesting. Do I have a good fit, or are the things that are very specific to my business or to the local regulation? And do I need to change the ERP a little bit, or do I need to adapt a little bit, right? So I think it sets you up very well in that journey. So I would say that doing that step in any case helps prior to the ERP project.
Got it. So some level of optimization process optimization and a thought about integrating which tools and at what point in time can be given even before selecting the ERP.
Yes.
Right. And then once the ERP is selected, maybe we'll have to make some changes and then we're through. So that's already given a thought, right? So that's how it'll be it'll be executed.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes, and
Interesting.
I would also think that it's also an element of change management, right? So when you start these discussions internally and you start discussing process optimization and speak about adoption of technology, it's almost also a mindset shift in a lot of businesses where people start becoming ready for technology adoption. Again, a very intangible, soft aspect of the project, but it's also very important from a mindset standpoint.
Right. And one of the things that you mentioned about what not to do, it involved that a CFO is actually thinking more purely from a finance angle. But ERP is actually a business tool and it impacts nearly every angle of business. And CFOs naturally are wired to think transactional. Right?
Yeah.
So they think about ROI, they think about transactions. So how do you kind of help a CFO deconstruct the true ROI of an ERP, both from a qualitative and a quantitative perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, in 15 years of being in the ERP industry, I think ROI has been a slightly elusive quantitative term, in my opinion, right? So this is what I've at least experienced through my years. And I would say the quantitative element again is, you would think about areas like how many man hours is it saving from a transactional processing, your month closing, maybe reporting and so forth. How are you saving man hours? You could think about where do you find efficiencies in working capital management. So because you automate your order to cash process or your accounts receivable, so then do you reduce your DSO? Hence you open up working capital. Maybe you redeploy the capital and you see ROI again. So there's a whole working capital view to ROI on ERP, which can be very tangible in my opinion.
Right.
And you could also think about OpEx, right? So you got let's say infrastructure costs going to the cloud, people cost, maybe you repurpose your finance function. So you could think about shared service centers and so forth on the back of ERP, and that could be a saving. So these are the quantitative elements in my elements, and I think a lot of ERP business cases are built on these quantitative measures,
aspects.
right? But as I said earlier on, I think you should look beyond the cost savings, in my opinion, because you have to look at, hey, how does this open up strategic time for my finance function?
Right.
How does this help me scale my business? Because this becomes a platform for M&A and let's say organic or inorganic growth, right? So it's a great enabler of growth, in my opinion. Decision making, very intangible. It's very difficult to say what is the return on investment from decision making because you got business visibility, but it's super important in my opinion.
Right.
Risk reduction. So because you're having an ERP, you're able to see the blind spots in your business, and hence you reduce risk. These are all things that actually add multiples of the quantitative measure, but it's very hard to talk about it from a quantitative standpoint. And hence I believe that you have to have a more holistic view of why you implement an ERP versus trying to build a business case and communicate it only purely from a cost saving point of view.
Right. And that's a great angle because I think not only from a cost saving standpoint or automation standpoint, but there are other strategic elements as well, like you mentioned about you being there being a possibility of acquisition or mergers. All of these things are enabling that. Let's say if I'm a conglomerate which has multiple ERPs, then it might pose a problem on consolidation. So bringing them on the standard platform might in itself lead a lot of efficiencies. Enabling the larger group to go into a shared services model. I think all these are great elements that are beyond just transactional as well and pretty much strategic in nature. And I think the ROI of any ERP for that matter comes over a period of time. In any case, it's not a overnight decision that, okay, we change our ERPs every now and then, right? So I think over a period of 8-10 years, you will see a lot of, the investment that we have made, it's a no-brainer that it is yielding results, both qualitative and strategically as well.
True.
Interesting. So in the AI world now, right, a lot of CFOs are thinking that, okay, let's put in some AI and save time, save man hours, because they are being asked questions that, hey, the marketing guy used to hire a copywriter. Now some tool is writing that copy, so we don't need a copywriter anymore. So why you as a CFO are not able to get rid of people, right? Or simple, why are you not plugging and playing some AI tools? But we all know, right? It's not that simple. So
Yeah.
what is the kind of readiness, or what is the kind of environment that you're seeing in terms of AI, which is impacting the finance function? And what kind of instances have you seen?
Yeah, I think finance is a function that is could be and should be early adopter of AI, in my opinion, because finance is a very data driven function. So
Right.
it is a function which is ripe for
Data driven, rule driven.
rule driven, and
Right.
they're analytical people by nature. So I think the persona also fits the adoption of AI, in my opinion, right? So I think that's number one. What I see is that finance functions are again bogged down with a lot of transactional activity, and they're trying to open up time towards strategic activities. And one element of that is, how do I infuse AI in the finance function and almost be the precursor for AI adoption cross organization, right? Because I think in a lot of cases, the finance function takes it up, starts doing some work, then other functions start saying, hey, finance is able to adopt it. Can we take this, connect it to, let's say, supply chain scenarios or manufacturing, shop floor scenarios? So I think it's almost the incubator of AI in organizations, in my opinion.
Interesting.
So coming back to that, I would say that finance functions are opening up time. I think some companies are moving forward. And I think where I see, let's say, it progressing well is where people start with simple use cases, define the ROI of a use case, go after it, pilot it, land that use case, make sure it's demonstrable value, and then go on to more complex use cases, in my opinion.
Correct. So connected to this, I always keep thinking that the models that we have today, these are all public models, right? And I cannot share my company data into these models. That's the number one question that I always get asked as to, okay, what are we doing in terms of AI? What do companies do in terms of AI? Are they going for enterprise licenses? Do you get inquiries for any kind of enterprise licenses and all? Because it's not safe to share the company data with a generic model out there.
True. So I think you see a few things, right? So one is, I think your question is, hey, are companies able to afford enterprise grade tools from an AI standpoint?
Yeah, afford and adopt.
Or can they create their own tools in-house, host it on Azure and so forth? And how do you manage data on top of and security on the top of these tools, right? Because again, managing role-based access, security, external threat, that becomes critical. So number one, I would say, is that I think there is a lot of drive towards democratization of AI. So it's becoming affordable. So it's a classical, pull down from the enterprise to the mid segment to the SMB, right? So I think that's happening very fast. AI is getting democratized, so it's going to be affordable to most companies via their tools. So AI is being infused in tools. So you don't necessarily need to always implement an AI tool. AI is in your ERP, or AI is in your CRM, and so far.
It's embedded in the ERP.
Yeah, AI is in your, let's say, your forecasting consolidation tool. So you're already able to utilize it.
Right.
Now, the second level is, there are tools like Copilot, Microsoft Copilot, for example, which are again coming as a part of the stack from Microsoft. For example, M365, right? So you get it as part of your data platform or your productivity platform, and you're able to utilize that again. So that is within the governance and the control of your instance or your environment and your data. So it's well controlled as well, and it is secure by design, right? So it's it's a very nice and controlled way to get into creating either AI scenarios or your agents and so forth. The third one that I see is that companies are looking to, it's an interesting one. I see companies looking to build their own LLMs to some degree on their own data, and have that as, I think that's kind of I've heard this a few times, where companies who are sitting on a lot of corporate data want to create their own LLMs and have the ability to interrogate that LLM for business decision making primarily, right? So, or functional decision making. So there again, there is work happening. The hyperscale cloud allows you to do that. There's good ability with tools like Purview from Microsoft to build security into your data architecture and eventually your LLM. And that's again, a way to go for companies who really want to get into creating their own LLMs.
Interesting. So this kind of gives me some ideas on where the CFOs are and what do they need to look at in terms of AI adoption. One thing I struggled always as a CFO, and I've heard many CFOs talk about this, is integrating the finance function or the finance system with other systems in their business applications. So what would be your top advice for how to achieve that seamless integration between various? How do we make different kind of tools talk to each other so that we are able to analyze the right set of data from one single source of truth?
Yeah, I would say one overriding theme would be to have a technology strategy. So for example, if you believe that you're going to invest in Microsoft as your productivity suite, then you should think, hey, why not have, let's say, the same technology vendor almost across a lot of your business applications, your data layer, eventually your AI and agentic layer, right? Because then the interoperability is very easy between them versus saying that my ERP could be X and then my CRM could be Y and my data could be something else. So then you have to stitch the ecosystem together, which is more complex than needed, right? So there's a best of breed and then there's a platform play, right? And I believe that a platform play makes a lot of sense, especially in today's world, which is quite fast moving in technology. The second element I would say is think about integration from a business process perspective. It's again, it's not the technology can be anything, right? You can API it, you can use iPaaS or a middleware to move data across, or you could use ERP native frameworks for moving data across. So the technology is actually secondary. So we should think about, hey, what is the business process transformation? Which is the owner of that? Which source system is the owner of the data? Do you need real-time integration or can it be scheduled? These are the key things that would need to be thought about from an integration standpoint. And then you think about the integration technology itself, and then whether the technology is scalable and secure, right? So do you have scalability and security built in by design? And of course, revisit the design of the integration. Again, that's the other thing that I see that a lot of companies do an integration, done and dusted, and then they forget about it, right? But you need to come back to it and check whether is this really working well? Is there an optimization? Is there a performance optimization? Technical and functionally, you need to revisit the integration on a periodic basis to make sure that it's functioning well for the business.
It's interesting that we keep going back to process redesign, right? So that's so critical for any technology implementation or an integration to work. So it's so critical for companies to sit peacefully, design their processes, and then start looking at the tech stack. So that's really valuable advice. Looking ahead, what would be your advice to kind of CFOs to future-proof their finance function? Here are the big 1 or 2 developments coming. CFOs, get ready for this, and you need to work on this to future-proof their finance teams.
Yeah, I think the world of finance or the finance function is moving from being post-mortem reporting to being prescriptive, predictive, insightful, right? So this is kind of the broad theme that we see. And for that to happen, I think what finance functions need to do is make sure that you have a great data platform backbone. Let's call it a cloud and cloud-based ERP with AI infused in it. I think that's very, very valuable, and that helps you go forward quite quickly. Finance functions need to think about, hey, how can I enable self-service BI linked to the cloud ERP and ancillary systems? So that again is important because business decision making has to be again given out to the business. So once you have that reporting dashboarding layer given out where people can interrogate the data, look at it and come back with the right questions, or you can give them the answers before they ask the question, I think you're in a great position. And then I think it's about hyper automation using RPA, AI to remove all the mundane tasks and then you're able to again open up time for the right tasks to business partner, right? So that's
Right.
I think the main thing.
Right.
And the last thing that we see, in recent times is agentic, right? So how do you take away processes from humans and drive it with agents, and then eventually bring out insights via agents, right? So that's kind of the next layer where you can again open up time and resource via using agentic technology, again as an extension of almost AI in that world. And in that, once you do all of this is all from a technology lens, right? So these are all things that finance can do from a technology standpoint. From a people standpoint, I think you can, once you have this going, then you have to think about, hey, how do I change the culture of my team, finance team? How can I, reskill them, build centers of excellence? It could be data, ESG, analytics, AI, so forth. And then create the mindset of business partnering, not only at the senior level, but also at the mid and junior levels from a finance function. So I think that really will transform the finance function, in my opinion.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And when I was a young financial analyst, one thing that I really hated the most, I loved analysis, but one thing that I really hated the most is I used to spend 80% of my time in cleaning the data. And I said, when will I really add value? When is that business partnering going to happen actually, right? So that was my biggest concern at that point in time. And I think I'm happy for the fact that people will start spending less and less time on cleansing the data. The dashboards will be automated. The analysis will be done by the system. And now you will spend more time on interpreting it and coaching the business teams to actually take some decisions. So that's the kind of shift that I'm seeing. And I'm really liking that shift, so that future analysts need not spend 80% of their time on cleaning the data.
True, 100%.
Great. Interesting. I think some great conversations. I think we moved from ERP implementation frameworks to adopting AI to building a futuristic finance function. So thank you for sharing all your experience with us. As a customary, we end our session with a rapid fire round. So I'm going to ask you some rapid fire. They need not be one-word answers, but they can be like quick answers.
Sure.
Okay. So here comes the questions. Any favorite book recommendation that you have for our audience?
Yeah, I'm currently reading a book called Focus by Daniel Goleman. I think important to find focus in business, in personal life, as well as in adoption of technology. So I think Focus is a very good book.
Amazing. Focus by Daniel Goleman.
Daniel
okay,
Goleman, that's right.
Amazing. One business leader that you admire and why?
Yeah, I think I admire, maybe I'm a bit biased, Satya Nadella is a great leader in my opinion. Mm-hmm. He's transformed the business with a strong vision. He also leads with empathy. And really democratizing technology with really a human vision, right? I think, or a human growth vision in that sense. Right. I think he's a great leader to.
I think companies like Google and Microsoft have been lucky to get the CEOs who are as visionary, as creative, as aggressive in terms of growth as the original founders were. So I think those two companies are very lucky to get those kind of founders.
Absolutely. It's all in the culture of those organizations, right?
So true. Yeah. AI in finance, buzzword or a reality?
I think it's a reality. Like I said, I think it's the incubator for the organization.
Amazing. One habit that helped you succeed as a trusted advisor and a consultant?
I think being value-led. I think that's very important. Again, in ERP consulting, I think anyone who's choosing an ERP partner, please make sure that you have a marriage of values between your organization and the ERP partner. I think that's very important.
Amazing. What's the best career advice that you've ever received?
It's probably not. I'm not sure if it's the best, but last week I heard a saying that said that when all is said and done, everything is said and nothing is done. So I think that's quite nice. It's one of my, one of our investors who mentioned it, and I think it's very true that we can say a lot, but everything lies in the execution and in the detail. So the attention to detail is super important.
Got it. So I can sum it up as developing execution bias.
Yes.
So be biased towards executing as early as possible.
Yeah,
right?
Strategy is important. Execution is even more important, in my opinion.
Amazing. Great. I think a great set of conversations. Thank you so much for sharing all your insights. Thank you all for joining with us today. I hope you got some insights on how you can go about ERP and technology implementation in your CFO's office. Thank you, Anilesh, for being here with us today. Many more sessions to come. Thank you for sharing your insights.
Thank you, Dhawal. It's been a pleasure. Appreciate all the time that you've given.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.